gotta treat your body like a finely tuned athletic machine. Hi there, Coach Sage Canaday out here on the road. We're gonna wheel out. We're doing a little experiment today, run-in form experiment. It's kind of for my own reference, but also maybe to help you, give you some pointers in what you're looking at, comparing my running speed at different speeds over about 200 meters. We'll wheel it out 660 feet, about 1/8 of a mile at different paces. 7-minute mile pace, what is that? 52.5 seconds per 200 meters. Then we'll do down to 6-minute mile pace, or 45 seconds per 200 meters. Then we'll do a run at 5-minute mile pace, about 307 per kilometer pace for 37.5 for 200 meters. I got my digital wheel out, get some side view shots. We're gonna compare some data on Coros. I got my Coros Apex Pro on, enter promo code SAGE Coros. It's a sponsor plug, but you can see the data on Strava. I'll upload it, and you can see the differences in my cadence or stride rate, how many steps I'm taking per minute, as well as some heart rate data. We'll get some heart rate data in there too for these different velocities. Let's get out there. All right, gotta wheel out this distance. This is 7-minute mile pace, 52 seconds per 200 meters. We're gonna ride it slightly uphill, but we'll get some moving shots here. Alright, so you can see in this clip, running at 7-minute mile pace, whatever that is in kilometer pace. Pretty slow and relaxed pace for me. Stride rate or cadence is pretty low at 168 steps per minute only. Again, this is a really relaxed pace for me, and form's not looking great. Some of these mistakes I'll comment on later because they show up even more when I start running faster. And as you notice, I am a bit of a heel striker as well, always have been, and that helps, or that kind of exacerbates the slow stride rate. But it is a pretty relaxed pace for me. Now at 6-minute mile pace, or 345 per kilometer pace, you see the cadence jumped up to 176 steps per minute, closer to that more ideal, being closer to the 180 steps per minute range, and a more comfortable up-tempo type of pace for me. Still fairly relaxed, and again, there's some tightness definitely in the hips and the hip extension, which I'll get into in a bit, as well as I've always carried my arms really low. I've always had low arm carriage. It's kind of a big difference. Some people have much higher arm swing, and my shoulders and neck are a bit tight though, so there's a limit on how far back that elbow goes. And I am kind of just waddling along. We'll get into the pelvic tilt and the hip flexion here. This will be 5-minute mile pace. 5-minute mile pace, 307 per kilometer pace. It's in between my marathon PR pace and my half marathon PR pace. So 37.5 seconds for 200 meters about. We'll roll into it here. All right, so stride rate has gone way up. Closer to 190 steps per minute. That's actually not ideal. It'd be better if it just stayed in the 180s, at least for me, running around this pace, which is closer to my half marathon PR pace. And what we want to look at here in this still frame, though, is we're talking about that hip extension. So, you know, it's good. I have a slight forward lean, which, if we drew a line straight down the body here, you could see got a good slight forward lean there. But what we're talking about with the hip extension is that trailing leg, or that back leg, the angle coming off there at the hip. It would be better if it was farther back where the green line is there. You could see my legs still pretty bent right on ankle flexion on toe off there with that back leg. And it's not very far back. It's really sapping my stride and sapping my power. And part of that's from that hip tightness, I think, the hip flexor tightness, but also not being able to target your butt muscle or my glute maximus on that side, on both sides actually, because of that lack of hip extension, not being able to kick that leg back as far when we're toeing off. There's also probably a lack of ankle flexion in there as well. So yeah, that ankle joint we want that to be at a higher angle as well to increase the power on push-off of the stride, but also the leverage. Alright, so what we see in the second still frame here is a little bit of an anterior pelvic tilt. In this frame, you can see the arch in the lower back is mainly what we're talking about. So focus on this red line. The curvature in there is a little too pronounced, and you can't see it because I didn't take my shirt off, but also kind of sitting in the saddle, right? We got this angle from my torso, but then we got this angle down the thigh there. Little too much knee bend probably, this torso angle, kind of riding the hips low, but that's probably again because of the lack of mobility. Then finally we have ankle flexion angle, right? Not getting a ton of force off of that, not getting a ton of power with the stride. Heel could be closer to the butt as well on the other leg that's up in the air, but that's just kind of the lack of mobility, I think, and the lack of power that I've not been able to generate. So definitely a lack in glute power, glute maximus power, especially with one leg. Not getting that extra pop and spring in my stride because the hip mobility is limiting the stride length. And when you have less power and a limited stride length, you're just not going to be as efficient running at a fast pace. It's also going to kind of look weird. Built up some excess bulk maybe on my quadricep muscle, the front of my thigh, as well as not capitalizing on that spring in the plantar flexion with the ankle mobility and using the calf muscle to really spring forward. So it's always good to have a rear view shot, and we probably should have focused on this more, but I was running about 6-minute mile pace, 345 per kilometer pace in this clip, looking at pronation with the feet, done a whole video on that, but also the splay angle, or what my foot movement is as my foot is raised off the ground as it comes up towards the butt. And there's some wiggle going on in there that's also indicating some of the hip imbalances. I could do a whole nother video on this type of movement, and I kind of don't have textbook good form. I've always kind of had some weird wiggle movement with the feet when they come back. Not a super high butt kick either, but that also is in relation to how much power you're generating as well as how fast you're running. And here I was actually just messing around doing a stride, and you could actually see I actually have better form running at about 4-minute mile pace, 15-second per 100-meter pace. I do have this weird bend though when I push off the ground with my foot. That's kind of an individual nuance, but it's good to help iron out your form running at much faster paces, and that's why we advocate doing pure speed stuff, speed work, and strides, and filming yourself while doing it, because as you get tired, your form also could break down. So it's better to do after you've limbered up, done some stretches, and you're relatively fresh, not running super high mileage or after a super long run or race or something like that.
Thanks to the Coros data, STRAVA data, as well as my heart rate readings. I meant to take my shirt off so you could see more of the mechanics of my arms, as well as what my core and torso are doing in terms of like pelvic tilt. Definitely check out some of our running form tutorials. Check out Coach Sandy's channel. Thanks for her for filming Running Wild. She's got great running form videos. I'll link to it up there as well as in the description below. Always working on running form, lots to improve. Thanks for watching. Thanks to the Patreon supporters for really making this possible. Thanks to title sponsor HOKA One, keeping the dream alive. Subscribe on here for more. Hope you're happy and healthy. Stay tuned for more.